Hi, today I just want to take a few minutes to give you some general suggestions for revising your Project 4 research proposal for submitting next week. Early this week, each of you will get a set of comments from me on your research proposal draft. That should help you take a few steps forward in revising. You also should receive comments from one of your classmates on your draft. And I actually would encourage you, if you have contact with one or more of your classmates later in the week, to offer to read each other's papers and continue to give each other feedback. Remember also that you can come see me during office hours if you want to ask questions. A most efficient way to use those office hours visits is to come in with some questions ready rather than just saying, here's my proposal draft, what do you think? If you come in with specific questions about certain parts of your project, we can talk pretty efficiently about those. But here I just want to take a few minutes to give you some general suggestions and get you on your way with revising. Okay, so here are some tips for revising your research proposal. The first thing that you might notice in some of my comments, and if I didn't comment on this, you'll want to make sure that you do this anyway, is that it would be really effective for you to do some signposting throughout the document. Signposting is a rhetorical move to help your readers follow along with you throughout the various sections of a long text. So you may remember that in some of the articles that we've read, at the end of an introduction, an author will tell you exactly what is following in each section. That's one signposting move. They also will go back at various points and remind you of something that they've said before. A final signposting move that you're probably used to is leading into a conclusion where you prepare your readers to read a summary. There are a few other ways that this happens in your research proposal. One is in the statement of a clear research objective, where you state explicitly what your research intends to accomplish. This should appear in your introduction, along with any research questions that you hope to answer through your research. Also in your introduction, you should have a map of the entire document. What will you be presenting in the research proposal that follows? That could be one or two nicely constructed sentences about what's coming. The second section of your research proposal is your literature review. And because you might have several subtopics in that literature review, it would be very helpful at the beginning of the lit review if you reminded or let readers know what topics you're going to be discussing or reviewing in that section. Remember, the literature review is intended for you to show research that has come before, scholarship that has come before on the topic, so that at the end of that literature review, you can show how the research that you are going to propose to do will add to that or will fill a gap, will highlight something that hasn't been looked at before. The research objective is something that you will purposefully repeat in key places throughout the text, not necessarily the exact same sentence over and over again, but you will take a moment to remind readers of what you're trying to accomplish. So let's look at that real quickly in the student sample text that I annotated for you last week. Okay, in the week 12 folder, you can see the annotated student sample, and I just want to highlight a couple of places where the student repeats their research objective. One is in the abstract. We can see the objective of this paper is to address mentoring practices displayed in various programs and understand what practices are found to be most effective in improving teacher retention rates within the first 5 years in the profession. Okay, so this research objective, and excuse my scrolling, appears again at the end of the introduction. It appears again in the introduction of the literature review to set up what is being looked at in the literature review. I have it highlighted there in blue in this video. And then it comes up again at the beginning of the research methods section so that the student can tie methods to the research being proposed. So keep in mind how you're going to purposefully repeat that research objective throughout the document. And if you've got a really good draft going, you might take a highlighter and highlight where you state your research objective just to make sure that you are consistent with your concept of what that research objective is throughout your paper. If you have one version of a research objective in the beginning and then a little bit later on, you find out that you're seeing something kind of different about it, step back and think to yourself, which one of these is really my purpose? And how can I revise my research objective statement to appropriately and accurately capture what I want to research here? Another thing that you might read for, in addition to doing this purposeful redundancy throughout your paper, would be examples of problematic redundancy, where you're repeating the same idea in subsequent sentences when instead you could be more streamlined, efficient, and purposeful. So you might look for places where you say something, then you say it again in the next sentence, but just a little bit different. And some of you might have comments from me like, which one of these do you think is stronger? Or I think you can get rid of the first sentence and just use the second one. But you can also read for those things yourself. So especially in the introduction and the literature review where you're trying to, like, in your drafting, get some steam for saying what you want to say. When you're in the revision stage, that's when you would cut out some of that extra writing that you don't need. Sometimes this is easier to see after you've stepped away from a draft for a few minutes. Another thing that you should do in revising this week is to review formatting expectations. Use the Purdue OWL sites for APA or MLA formatting to look at things like how to construct headers or a title page, how to do in-text citations, and how to craft your works cited or bibliography format. Even if you think you have this down, review it anyway. I've noticed some people, as I read drafts, not using even the right kind of citation for their discourse community. So I think this is a good moment to step back, review citation formatting expectations, and show in this major project that you can work through the proper kind of formatting. This does impact your ethos as a student, as a writer, and as a researcher, and there's an expectation that you can do simple conventions of formatting on your own as you get into more writing in your discipline. Finally, you should use the assignment rubric to do some self-assessment. So we'll take a look at that in just a second. But I would take the rubric from the assignment description and use it as a checklist to walk through your own paper and make sure that you're doing the moves that are expected in this project. So let's take a look at that now. Okay, in the assignment description, and here I am in the Project 4 folder, there is a rubric. This is the rubric that I will use, this chart here, to review your projects. So I'm going to look for all of these qualities in each section. So let's just talk about one of them. In the introduction, I'm looking to see that you have these concepts. Do you introduce the topic? Do you define any key terms that need to be defined? And those should be defined based in the research that you're looking at, not on like dictionary.com or something like that. Do you provide a roadmap of the project, cite key sources? So there should be citation right away in your introduction. And do you clearly feature that research objective? So it would make sense to me that you take this rubric and you look at each clause or each sentence to go, am I doing this stuff? Am I, for example, situating my literature review within a background of research? What's been done before? What is going on? Now, most of you are looking at past research, not at present research, but a handful of you might be looking at present research. Remember that on many of your literature review projects, I made the comment that when we do the lit review in Project 4, you would be integrating sources without doing a lot of direct quoting. So you would check yourself for that. So use this as a way to review your own work and to find things that you want to work on over the week.